We're going to get started with the next session. Our speakers are here, so please take a seat. So we continue now after the coffee break with a session entitled On the Right Track for a New Growth Model in the Region. We're delighted to have the Minister of Development of Greece, Kostas Skrekas, who I invite to join me now on the stage. We will also be joined by Andreea Moraru, Regional Head of Greece and Cyprus at the EBRD, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And we have Athanasios Papanikolaou, Board Member of the Federation of Hellenic Food Industries and the CEO of Vivartia. Welcome all of you. Welcome, Minister. Please join me on the stage and we'll get started. Nice to meet you. Yeah, take a seat. Welcome, Minister. Take a seat. And welcome. Thank you very much. We're going to get started, and I'm going to hand straight over to the Minister, who I believe will make some opening remarks for 4 or 5 minutes.
Yes. Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for the kind invitation. And I think this is a great forum, a very important forum, which takes place during a period when Greek economy has realized some very important achievements and accomplishments. So now they have told me to change to Greek, to turn it to Greek, so I don't know which language should I use. But let me say, since we have a few people from abroad, let me say that indeed, over the last 4 or 5 years, the Greek economy is growing constantly. This year, the current year, the growth is 2.4%. It will reach 3% in 2024. So the Greek economy currently is growing with a pace which is 3 times, 4 times higher than the average European growth. Also, exports in 2022 have been considerably increased versus 2019. We have an increase in exports of more than 60%. Foreign direct investments have increased by 57% in 2022 versus 2021, when Europe as a whole entity grew, foreign direct investments in Europe grew only by 1%. 57% in Greece in 1 year, just 1% increase in FDI in Europe. We have created 400,000 new jobs over the last 4 years. We suffer from an inflation, of course, which in Greece is 2.4%. It is half of the European average inflation. That means that the measures that we have taken in order to tackle inflation pressures are effective, of course, are not enough, and therefore we continue taking measures in order to support and to help households against those extreme inflationary pressures. And of course, last but not least, very recently we have obtained investment grade. And this is the proof that the economic growth of Greece is sustainable. Of course, now the big question and the big challenge is how to maintain, how to keep such a sustainable growth in the following years. Over a period that we face a very volatile geopolitical scene. We have a war, a devastating war, because of the Russian invasion to Ukraine. We have a volatile situation in Israel. We had to confront pandemic. We had to confront inflation pressures because of the COVID, and then we had to manage a huge energy crisis caused by the COVID and because of the Russian invasion to Ukraine. And it is it is very remarkable, the fact that we have achieved all the previous accomplishments, having at the same time to confront and to tackle all these 4 global crises. So what are the priorities that we have set as a government in order to be able to sustain a robust economic growth? We have 5 priorities. The first has to do with the huge transformation of our energy sector. Currently, we have planned and we are implementing a green transition, a very ambitious green transition. In the first 8 months, more than 50% of the electricity consumption came from renewables. Last year, we have deployed almost 2,000 megawatts of renewables, when between 2015 and 2019, we were constructing and connecting to the grid only 200 and 300 megawatts, 2,000 megawatts in 2022. The same pace of deployment continues. We have estimated that by the year 2030, 80% of the electricity consumption should come from renewables. For this reason, we're going to deploy more or less another 11 to 12 gigawatts of renewables. We have to deploy around 8 gigawatts of storage capacity, both batteries and storage systems. And of course, we have to increase the electrical connections, the interconnections with the neighboring countries. So we have recently doubled the electricity connection with Bulgaria. We are tripling the electricity connection with Albania. We are doubling electricity interconnection with Italy and North Macedonia. And of course, we have 2 visionary projects that yesterday obtained the PCI status, which is the electricity interconnection between Egypt and Greece, and of course, electricity interconnection, submarine electricity interconnection between Greece, Crete, and Cyprus. We also implementing a huge renovation wave, because energy efficiency is in the core of our strategy for the green transition. We also committed to a bold reform agenda. EY announced that Greece is #1 in the world when it comes to the development pace of reducing the red tape, cutting the red tape. Digitalization of the public sector is one of our main priorities. Also, we are promoting research and innovation. Greece has been announced to be the first in the increase of public investments, public spending in the energy and innovation sector within Europe, and the 6th European member state in absolute terms. That shows how much committed we are in promoting research and innovation, and moreover to connect, to link research with industry. So no research for research, but research in order to arrive to final products and services. We want to transform Greece into the main logistics hub in the southeast Europe, and of course the port of Piraeus, but also the other 4 ports that are currently under development are going to play a very important role. And final, last but not least, industry and manufacturing. Tourist sector is very important. Shipping sector is very important. The Greek fleet represents 60% of the European fleet. We have more than 5,520 ships. So all these sectors are very important, but without a very sound industrial base, manufacturing base, I don't think that we can sustain long-term development for the Greek economy. Therefore, new incentives for promoting industrial activities are going to be announced, and of course, all those incentives are going to be linked with the extroversion of those industries. So now is the time for someone to invest in Greece because we have a stable political environment with our government. Very recently, it took office. We have a new term of 4 years. We have a robust economy. We are very much committed on cutting the red tape and continuing the structural reforms. We have a remarkable human capital with a strong academic background. And of course, Greece is constantly a pillar of stability in the broader area of Southeast Mediterranean and Southeast Europe.
Well, thank you very much for that, Minister, for outlining the priorities. And I think we had several panels this morning, and some of the points that you've made, particularly about investment, about raising the level of investment in Greece, came up on all the panels, actually. And it seems to be that there's a kind of a convergence around this view that that's the key, really, to long-term growth, to sustaining growth in Greece over the medium and long term. And of course, this comes after a period in which investment as a share of GDP in Greece during the crisis years really sank to new lows. So we're talking about increasing, Mr. Malonas this morning talked about increasing the level of fixed investment as a percentage of GDP to around 19-20% from where it is now, 14%, and that being the key. So I guess the question is, how to do that. And even before the crisis, Greece didn't have a good track record of attracting FDI, and that started to change. So I guess this probably should be a focus of our discussions today, and how can Greece and Europe begin to, in a way, catch up with what we see in the US, which is far ahead of Europe in this regard, whether it's because of deeper capital markets, role of venture capital, role of R&D, investment in innovation, and so on. We need to look to some of these examples. So I'd like to hear from the other panelists, and you again, Minister, afterwards, about how you see this. And maybe first of all, from the EBRD's perspective, that's obviously a big priority of yours, attracting foreign investors. That's your particular remit, I believe, Andreea.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. And I would like to thank the organizer, the Economist, for inviting me to be part of this distinguished conference. I attended over the last 2 days, and I can say it was one of the best conferences I've attended in a very long time. So thank you very much once again. It's an honor for me to be here. So I'm sure that you're all familiar with who we are, but just in a nutshell, we are an impact investor, development bank operating in 38 countries. We started to operate in a different Greece in 2015 on a temporary mandate in the middle of the financial crisis. Initially, we supported the bailing of the 4 systemic banks, but since then changed a lot. And we're very proud to say that during this period, we invested 7 billion in the Greek economy in over 100 projects. We can say probably that we are the biggest investor through the crisis in the private sector. And I'd like to outline this because it's important to Joan's point. For us in Greece, the mandate has been really focusing on supporting private sector. So 100% of our portfolio is private. And another pillar of our strategy here is to try to mobilize investors, even during the crisis, to try to bring them to the country, and also to provide comfort to their investments in the country. So we heard a lot of praise for Greece during the previous panels, during the last 3 days, and we fully agree with this. It's an amazing transformational story. we wouldn't believe in 2015 when we opened our office in Athens on a temporary basis that in 8 years we are going to invest 7 billion. And things accelerated actually since 2019 when we've seen an increase in reform, and also he's been accompanied about the increase in our investment in the country, and also about the change in the structure of the investor in the country. Initially, we focused a lot on short-term trade, banking sector. Since 2019, we started to see privatizations like PPC that we supported, other investments that we've done on the capital markets, in the infrastructure. So the structure of the investor changed significantly. Now, going forward, there is a positive momentum, but we have to maintain this momentum, and what we need to do, what Greece needs to do, and to continue this growth trajectory, and also, more important, build resilience, make the economy of extroversion. We talk a lot about the dependence on tourism, and also attract foreign investors, that it's key for this. I mean, gross capital formation has been very low. It's the investment gap, it's still about 100 billion compared to other countries. So there is lots of things to be done. So from our point of view, few things that we see crucial for this. RRF is key. We see it as an amazing tool to attract investors. It's a tool that mobilize investors because it combines the European funds with private money through the commercial banks and IFIs. We are also part of a small implementer. We have 4% of the facility. But more important, these are investments and loans that are done on commercial basis. So all the projects that are done are sustainable, are long-term, and for new projects. We've seen Greece has been the front runner for this, 11 billion by August. What we'd like to see now, an acceleration of this, and more important, disbursement of these funds, because I've seen there have been lots of approvals, but the disbursements have not been quite slow. Second, capital markets. This is very important to mobilize investors and also to diversify the funding sources available to Greek companies. We've seen that it can be quite challenging to be dependent on the banking sector. The banking sector now is doing very well, high liquidity, but it's important also to have this capital market as a tool to attract financing, and not only debt financing, but also equity financing, because this is another thing that is needed in Greece. Companies, they need capital in order to grow. After 10 years of crisis, the capital and the leverage of some of the companies is very low. And we've been very supportive of this. We are, again, one of the largest investors on the capital markets in Greece. We invested in bonds and also in equity. And then it's important to continue with the structural reforms, and they've been mentioned this morning. For us, very important is digitalization. Greece has been the front runner, and we can say that probably it's one of the countries that they took the most advantage of the COVID crisis in the acceleration of the digital agenda, with all the digital platform that have been created. This is a good base, but there is still lots of work to be done. There is lots of education required, I think, for the overall population to be able to understand, to have these tools at their disposal and use them, that will have an impact on the reduction of tax evasion, also the improvement of the healthcare sector through the digitalization of the records, education, and so on. Reform of the education is very important. As Greece is trying to change the structure of the economy, we have to create jobs and people. We have to prepare people for the future Greece that will require different skills that are now. So this is also, and I understand that it's quite high on the government agenda. And the judicial system, which is also very important. Some progress has been done, but still a lot of work. Greece came down from a very high level of NPL, so 15%. But all these NPLs are still in the economy, and also to attract investors in this type of structure, you need to have a system that it's able to clear these non-performing loans.
Thank you very much, Andrea. So it's very good to have a representative from the business sector, from one of a key industry in Greece. So thank you very much, Mr. Papanikolaou, for joining us. Yeah, as I say, agri-food, big, important business for Greece, suffered some damage, unfortunately, in the recent floods, and we'll have to see what the impact will be, going forward. But a sector with a lot of potential, and I'm sure you're going to tell us about that and, what's needed really to drive the growth of that sector and what you'd like to see from the government's second term.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Allow me to speak in Greek. I was prepared to speak in Greek. They told me yesterday to speak in Greek. So, είμαι εδώ εκπροσωπώντας τη Vivartia. Είμαι διευθύνων σύμβουλος στη Vivartia, μία από τις μεγαλύτερες επενδύσεις του CVC στη χώρα και ταυτόχρονα εκπροσωπώ και το Σύνδεσμο Ελληνικών Βιομηχανιών Τροφίμων, που είναι ουσιαστικά το επίσημο όργανο εκπροσώπησης των κοινών θέσεων της ελληνικής βιομηχανίας τροφίμων στη χώρα. Να πω δύο λόγια γι' αυτό, ότι ο Σύνδεσμος Τροφίμων ουσιαστικά είναι μία από τις μεγαλύτερες δραστηριότητες στην ελληνική μεταποίηση, με ένα κύκλο εργασιών περίπου 15,5 δις και πολύ μεγάλη εξαγωγική δραστηριότητα που υπερβαίνει τα 6 δις. Είναι μια περίοδος που ο επισιτισμός είναι στις προτεραιότητες και της χώρας και της κυβέρνησης και είναι μία από τις έγνοιες που έχουμε και εμείς, πώς αυτό το πράγμα θα το αντιμετωπίσουμε με τις δυσκολίες που υπάρχουν σε όλα τα επίπεδα με τον καλύτερο τρόπο. Τα τελευταία χρόνια και με την ενεργειακή κρίση και με την υγειονομική και με την γεωπολιτική, αυτό που θέλω να αναφέρω, και είναι και εδώ και ο Υπουργός, καταφέραμε ουσιαστικά να έχουμε επισιτιστική επάρκεια. Δεν παρατηρήθηκαν ελλείψεις στη χώρα σε καμία από τις δύσκολες αυτές περιόδους. Είχαμε ομαλή λειτουργία της αγοράς και με λίγα λόγια η βιομηχανία τροφίμων σε όλα τα επίπεδα παρέμεινε ανθεκτική. Αυτό βέβαια που καταλαβαίνουμε όλοι, ότι είναι μέσα από τέτοιες δυσκολίες ενεργειακές, υγειονομικές και γεωπολιτικές, καταλαβαίνουμε όλοι τι μέτρα πρέπει να πάρουμε για να γίνουμε ακόμα πιο ανθεκτικοί και ακόμα πιο ισχυροί για τα επόμενα χρόνια. Στο πλαίσιο αυτό, το περιβάλλον του ESG και το πλαίσιο γενικότερα του ESG νομίζω ότι θα μας βοηθήσει πολύ και για την πράσινη μετάβαση με μέτρα και πρωτοβουλίες που θα πάρουμε, η ανάπτυξη της τεχνολογίας, η ενσωμάτωση της τεχνολογίας και ιδιαίτερα της τεχνητής νοημοσύνης. Νομίζω ότι αυτό θα μας βοηθήσει να αντιμετωπίσουμε πολλά από τα ρίσκα που βλέπουμε μπροστά μας τα επόμενα χρόνια. Με βάση το report του World Economic Forum, 9 στα 10 top ρίσκα των εταιριών της βιομηχανίας τροφίμων είναι related με το ESG. Αυτό που θέλω να αναφέρω είναι ότι παρά το ότι όλοι κάνουμε αυτές τις προσπάθειες και από το 2015 που υιοθετήσαμε τους στόχους βιώσιμης ανάπτυξης μέχρι το 2030, σήμερα δυστυχώς με βάση την ενημέρωση που έχουμε από τα Ηνωμένα Έθνη, το 82% των δικτών είναι δυστυχώς εκτός πορείας. 17 δε από τους δείκτες που έχουν τεθεί από τα Ηνωμένα Έθνη μέχρι το 2030 επίσης δεν θα επιτευχθούν. Ενημερωνόμαστε συνέχεια γι' αυτό. Γίνεται για δύο λόγους. Υπάρχει σοβαρό έλλειμμα εκπαίδευσης στις επιχειρήσεις για το θέμα του ESG και επίσης υπάρχουν και ελλείμματα λόγω των δυσκολιών που προέκυψαν τα τελευταία χρόνια οικονομικών πόρων. Παγκόσμια, οι μελέτες που έχουν φτάσει στα χέρια μας λένε ότι λείπουν 11 με 15 3 δολάρια ετησίως για να έρθουμε στο επίπεδο που πρέπει. Θα πρέπει να κληθούμε να κάνουμε και εμείς ως επιχειρήσεις 4 φορές μεγαλύτερες επενδύσεις για να εξυγχρονιστούμε και να φτάσουμε στους στόχους που έχουν τεθεί για τα Ηνωμένα Έθνη. Από την άλλη μεριά, αυτό σημαίνει καλύτερο συντονισμό των ιδιωτικών επιχειρήσεων με το κράτος για να υπάρχει καλύτερη υποστήριξη και ίσως και καλύτερη χρηματοδότηση για τις επενδύσεις που έχουμε τα επόμενα χρόνια. Σε κάθε περίπτωση, έχουμε δει σαν Σύνδεσμος Ελληνικών Βιομηχανιών Τροφίμων τις ευκαιρίες που υπάρχουν και θέλω εδώ να αναφέρω μερικές από αυτές, κυρίως αυτές που είναι related με τον πρωτογενή τομέα. Το πρώτο και το σημαντικό κομμάτι είναι η στροφή στη βιολογική γεωργία. Είναι κάτι που είναι πολύ σημαντικό. Υπάρχει παγκόσμια μεγάλη ζήτηση για βιολογικά προϊόντα. Οι καταναλωτές ζητάνε να τρώνε καλύτερα προϊόντα, καλύτερα τρόφιμα, χωρίς χημικά, με λιγότερη ζάχαρη και αυτό είναι κάτι που πρέπει να το κάνουμε και η Ελλάδα μπορεί να πρωταγωνιστήσει σε αυτό το κομμάτι. Το δεύτερο είναι βιώσιμες αλυσίδες εφοδιασμού. Οι επιχειρήσεις μπορούν να επικεντρωθούν στην ενίσχυση της βιωσιμότητας στην αλυσίδα εφοδιασμού, προσθέτοντας πρακτικές όπως η μείωση των αποβλήτων, η ορθή διαχείριση των φυσικών πόρων και ασφαλώς δίκαιη αμοιβή στους αγρότες. Είναι πολύ σημαντικό να στηρίζουμε τις τοπικές κοινωνίες. Πιστεύουμε ότι υπάρχει χώρος και για τις επιχειρήσεις να στηρίξουν τις τοπικές κοινωνίες. Σε αυτή την περίπτωση θα κρατήσουμε τους καλούς ανθρώπους της δεύτερης γενιάς εκεί να δουλέψουν στη γη, τους ανθρώπους που είναι μορφωμένοι, που είναι καλύτερα εκπαιδευμένοι, να μην φύγουν έξω από τα χωριά τους και να μην φύγουν έξω από τη χώρα και να μείνουν εκεί και να προσφέρουν στον πρωτογενή τομέα. Και τέλος, νομίζω ότι πρέπει να στηρίξουμε τις επιχειρήσεις με διαφάνεια και σωστή διακυβέρνηση. Όταν οι επιχειρήσεις οργανώνται στο κομμάτι αυτό, θα είναι καλό και για την οικονομία και για τη χώρα. Στο πλαίσιο αυτό, λοιπόν, ο Σύνδεσμος Ελληνικών Βιομηχανιών Τροφίμων έχει σαν προτεραιότητες όλα αυτά τα κριτήρια του ESG που αναπτύσσουν καλύτερα προϊόντα, καλύτερες επιχειρήσεις, καλύτερη οικονομία, να τα στηρίξει για να έχουμε στη χώρα μας καλύτερα προϊόντα με κοινωνική και περιβαλλοντολογική ευθύνη και καλύτερη και πιο υγιεινή διατροφή για όλους. Αυτές είναι οι θέσεις μας. Να σεβαστώ και το χρόνο και μπορώ να ακούσω και την ερώτησή σας αν υπάρχει.
Well, thanks very much, and thank you, for addressing the goals, the ESG goals, and tying that into the potential for this particular sector in Greece, which I agree with you, has great scope for growth. And I want to come back and ask you a few questions in a minute. But first, turning back to you, Minister, of course, feel free to comment on anything that you've heard from your co-panelists. I just wanted to ask you about something we haven't discussed that much in the proceedings so far, just about government's privatization plans. Because if we're talking about unleashing more entrepreneurship and attracting investment, Greece still has a relatively large state sector. It's good to hear what's coming down the pipeline in terms of privatization as well.
Although this is a responsibility of the Minister of Economy, but anyway, I can tell you that for sure we are very much committed in privatize the companies that must be privatized. On all the previous period, as a Minister of Energy and Environment, I would like to remind you that we privatized the state-owned gas company 100%, and getting also a very important price, a very good price for that asset. And we also increased the private participation to PPC, to the public power company. In these two cases, I think that finally that strategy has helped the companies to evolve. We see now that PPC has become a national champion. PPC is expanding its business activities in Romania. Very recently, it was announced that PPC acquired Enel Romania. They also participate to the scheme that they're going to develop the largest dam and a hydroelectric power plant in North Macedonia. So we see a former state, completely state-owned company, because still state owns 35-34% of the share, but a former 100% state-owned company has become a company with large extroversion, a company which is growing, passing through an energy crisis with minimum, let's say, minimum damages, if any. And currently they announced that they're going to have 10 million users, 10 million customers of electricity. So privatization will play a very important role. And I know from the Ministry of Economy that also we have other assets that enter a status to be privatized or to be sold, to be utilized through the participation of the private sector. But I would like to say that Greece has done many steps all the previous years over this period that we faced a huge financial crisis, and which lasted more than 10 years. And it is indeed a unique turnaround success story, because a few years ago Greece was the black sheep of Europe, And during COVID period and onwards, Greece was the example that was shown globally for other more developed countries to follow. That means that finally here in Greece, we can do things, we can be pioneers, we can be front runners, even in green transition, in the economy. But we need to have one main thing, which is a very strong government with a strong political will to do what is necessary to maintain and to stimulate a sustainable growth for the benefit of the people. Because everything we do it for the people.
Thank you, and of course we concur with that. I was just talking with Daniel Franklin, my co-chair in the break, that we sat here on this stage, through those crisis years when it was a lot of doom and gloom. So it's very, very nice to be much more positive on this platform today. But we will look forward, and maybe you could address one of the questions and challenges raised by Mr. Papanikolaou, and it's a challenge that's facing other sectors in Greece, which is compliance with these ESG goals, which is actually going to be quite expensive and difficult, for this sector, the food sector, to meet these goals. It's going to cost a lot of money, and there's going to be a lot of training required. So I guess I wanted to ask you, what can the state do to support the private sector in realizing these ESG goals? Because it's going to be a major challenge for many sectors in Greece over the coming period.
And for this, certainly we're going to need quite a lot of money that must be invested. But let me say that the national strategy in cutting CO2 emissions is helping the private sector to fulfill also partly the commitments regarding ESG. So if, for example, we manage to use 80% of the electricity demand from renewables, that means that the electricity that food industry and all industry, Greek industry, that is going to use is going to be produced from renewables, and it's going to have 80% lower CO2 emissions versus the past. Also, but at the same time, of course, we have other financial instruments and incentives in order to help them manage their waste, and the waste they produce to be used as raw material for another industry. So we're promoting circular economy. And in fact, let me say that in the following months, we're going to announce a new investment law, which exactly is going to help and support the industry to manage, reduce the footprint, the environmental footprint, and also establish maybe new sectors of the industry that will take the waste after the collection in order to transform them into products. And this is going to be announced in the following period. So CO2 emissions cutting, managing treating the waste, all these issues that will help our industry to be sustainable in the future, because people are more and more friendly and are more and more aware of what the product that they buy is doing to the environment.
Thank you. Andreea, maybe you would like to come in on this question as well, because obviously it's a big focus of yours at the EBRD. usefully be done here, both by government and by the private sector itself too?
Look, from our side, as an investor, we are pushing a lot to raise the ESG standards for our investments in Greece. As a bank, we committed that by 2025, 50% of our investments are in green projects. In Greece, we already exceeded this last year. 55% of our investments have been green. What we do, we are supporting our clients to embark into this journey. For example, for the financial institutions, we have a program where we support them in incorporating climate risk in their underwriting criteria. For the corporates that we work with, we push them to issue more green bonds, sustainability-linked bonds. So everything we do, actually, all our investment these days are screened against ESG, because this is the only way to create this environment where people become very aware and they're very keen to embark on this transformation. So we are from the investor side, we are pushing a lot, and I'm very pleased to say that we've seen quite a change in mindset in the last couple of years in Greece about the ESG, green sustainability. Actually, we've seen the first issuance for a sustainability-linked bond coming from Greece in our countries of operation, which was PPC, which was a big step forward, because the sustainability-linked bonds is not only linked only to the use of proceeds of a bond, it changed the full business of the company in reducing emissions. And we are also working with SMEs. We also have to mention SMEs because it's an important component of the Greek economy. We have a very successful advisory program that actually is supported by the Greek government, the Minister of Development and the Minister of Finance, for which we are very grateful, where we work with really small companies, with advisors, to make them aware of the ESG issues, how they can improve the standards. We put consultants that help them to raise this as well. And last but not least, we have a program to advise the government on PPPs, also very successful. This is also very important in the context of the recent climate events. So we are working on structuring PPPs for irrigation. We have now a project that actually is the last one, was announced last week, goes to tuition on the student accommodation in Thessaly. So everything we try to do in our activities to have also a green component alongside our private sector mandate.
Thank you. This probably got to be the last question, because we have to move on to the next session, which is, again, a focus on financial sector in Greece. I'm sure some of these points will be picked up. But a question for you, a couple of things. Are you concerned about a knock-on impact of the floods, obviously, on agriculture, on food prices? You said Greece hasn't experienced shortages, but I'm thinking about next year and what the consequences of this are going to be and what support is needed from the government for the sector. I know support has been given by the government. And just very quickly, because it was a theme yesterday about the role of AI and its use cases, particularly in this field of agriculture in terms of monitoring crops and all this. Is AI already being used in the sector in a small way or a big way? And how do you see the future of that?
Thank you for the question. Αυτό που θέλω να πω είναι ότι εμείς σαν εταιρεία εδώ και πάρα πολλά χρόνια, η εταιρεία μας είναι πάνω από 70 χρόνια στην Ελλάδα, δραστηριοποιούμαστε στον πρωτογενή τομέα. Όλα αυτά τα χρόνια υπήρχε πολύ μεγάλη εξέλιξη, άλλαξαν τα προϊόντα, άλλαξαν οι διαδικασίες, άλλαξαν τα εργοστάσια, βελτιώθηκαν οι παραγωγικές διαδικασίες. Πολλές από τις τελευταίες επενδύσεις που είχαμε κάνει, ιδίως στο κομμάτι του Dairy Group, στο κομμάτι των γαλακτοκομικών προϊόντων, είχαμε συνεργαστεί με την κυβέρνηση και με τα επενδυτικά προγράμματα και με τα ευρωπαϊκά προγράμματα και πήραμε βοήθειες και ενισχύσεις για την ανάπτυξη των εργοστασίων μας. Πρόσφατα, μετά την επένδυση του CVC, που είναι ο μοναδικός μέτοχος της εταιρείας, το ESG και η φιλοσοφία του ESG έχει έρθει πολύ σημαντικά μέσα στην εταιρεία μας. Κάθε εταιρεία έχει τμήμα και κάθε μήνα είναι μέρος του management team πώς θα διαχειριστούμε όλες αυτές τις προτεραιότητες. Ξέρουμε σήμερα ότι η αξία μιας εταιρείας δεν προέρχεται μόνο από τα μερίσματα στους μετόχους, αλλά την πραγματική enterprise value που δημιουργείται μέσα από ποιοτικά στοιχεία μέσα από επενδυτικά προγράμματα, μέσα από την αναβάθμιση και τον εξυγχρονισμό των προϊόντων. Με την έννοια αυτή, εμείς συνεργαζόμαστε συνεχώς με την κυβέρνηση σε αυτό το κομμάτι. Ψάχνουμε για χώρους και για χωράφια. Θέλω να πω ότι αυτό που μας λείπει πολλές φορές στη χώρα για την παραγωγή δεν είναι τα χωράφια, αλλά είναι τα εργατικά χέρια. Πολλές φορές δεν βρίσκουμε ανθρώπους να δουλέψουν και να έχουμε τη γνώση και την παραγωγικότητα που θέλουμε σε αυτό το κομμάτι. Άρα είναι ένα θέμα αυτό τα εργατικά χέρια στον πρωτογενή τομέα και στην κτηνοτροφία και στη γεωργία. Το έχουμε συζητήσει πολλές φορές και με τα αρμόδια υπουργεία πώς θα έρθουν άνθρωποι να προσφέρουν και να δουλέψουν, αλλά άνθρωποι που πρέπει να έχουν και την παραγωγικότητα που χρειάζεται σε αυτό το κομμάτι. Είναι μια δύσκολη περίοδος για τον πρωτογενή τομέα, γι' αυτό μιλάμε και λέμε πρέπει να επενδύσουμε συνεχώς, να έχουμε καλούς ανθρώπους, μορφωμένους ανθρώπους, εκπαίδευση και συνεργασία του ιδιωτικού τομέα με την κυβέρνηση.
Well, thank you very much. We have been running late all morning, partly to do with the transport problems this morning, which everybody is aware of in Athens. But I don't want to run too much into the next session. So please join me in thanking our panel this morning. Thank you very much indeed.